Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on? Today's going to be a special podcast where it's going to be me speaking to you guys about the things I've learned in my coaching experience and what's really made a difference for myself, but also my clients as well. And one of the things we're going to touch on today is about the perspective we have. And what is a perspective? It's the way we see the world. It's the way we understand the world. It's the way we understand what's happening to us. And most people only see things from their perspective, not from everybody else's perspective. So the three lessons I'm going to look to show you today are the power of a global perspective. The more reps we do, the better that we're going to be. And the idea that everything can change once we change the parameters. And so let's start off. What's a global perspective? A global perspective is seeing the world in a multitude of different ways. So for myself, this story that I'm going to share with you guys is back in 2021, August, when I went to hike the Inca Trail in Machu Picchu, which is in Peru. It's a 4-day hike. It's an incredible experience. And the more impactful thing is that we got to spend 4 days with some of the locals. And when you're going on this hike, it's a tremendous amount of effort. It takes a lot of time. We're sitting there with our camelbacks, and there are these people called porters, and porters are carrying 50 to 100-pound bags, and they're flying up the mountain. And it was interesting because we're struggling with this because we're not used to the altitude. The altitude there is like around 11,000, which is almost 2 miles high. And we're sitting at an altitude in Florida of about 0. So there's definitely an impact there. We're hiking. It's challenging. And the thing that I realized was as you start to talk to more of these people, more of the locals, it was just astounding because we would get to the top. And I did a podcast with Teddy probably a few years ago, and I'll reference that in the show notes. And the thing is, though, what I didn't really mention was the first day we hiked up there, there was the tents were prepared, the dinner was prepared, and then also as we're walking up, the porters are clapping for us. Now, why were they clapping for us? Because in that moment, we've hiked for 8 hours. They were trying to cheer us on. They were trying to provide us value, which I appreciated. However, they were cheering for us because that was the first trip they took since COVID. So that's a year and a half of not working. They had to find other jobs, other roles, but this is what they really enjoyed. And it was amazing, the reception and the pride they have because they wanted to help. Like they wanted to provide as much value as possible because they thought the Inca Trail 4-day cost was a lot, which it is. But the thing is that they were trying to provide as much value, which was incredible to see. And then what gave an even more broadened perspective is we're all going, we're complaining, we're tired, we're struggling. And these guys are flying. They're doing it in half the time we are. Enough time for them to cook up our meal, set up the whole tent, and do everything. It was amazing. And the other big part was after we hiked the Inca Trail, we went to the jungle, the Amazon jungle called Iquitos, which is northern Peru. And what happened there was they were hit hard with COVID. They were struggling a lot. They had houses that were built out of mud, and they were just grateful to have anybody around to give them business because the tourist industry had died down there a lot just due to everything that was going on because it's so remote. And the really interesting thing for me there was they had so much gratitude for anybody purchasing anything. Like they are literally setting up shop out of their huts, selling waters, selling food stands. They had everything. And it was fascinating that this is where they lived, this is where they worked. And I just bring that perspective back because in the United States, we can be so hard on ourselves, so difficult on ourselves of, oh, I couldn't afford that trip to Europe, or I didn't get to go to Asia this year, or I didn't get the big bonus and I didn't get my new car this year. And it's like, what's that all for? And I think the point is that having a global perspective, seeing how a majority of the world lives, that the Peru example is just one. There are many, many places around the world, especially in the United States, where people are really struggling. And I don't think we realize the challenges that people face. And when I say that, I mean, it's important to realize how much we truly have. Like in reality, if you have food, shelter, clothing, you're good. You're the top 1% earner in the worldwide makes $31,000 a year. In the United States, the average family makes $53,000 a year. Like, and we can be so hard on ourselves because there's inflation, there's challenges. We didn't get the house, we didn't get the new car. And it's just, guys, take a moment and breathe. Breathe for a second. Do what everyone does, what the natural breathing is, which is 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. And when you do that, it calms you down because we need to have the proper perspective of where we're at on this beck and call. And the thing is that a majority of people do not leave their hometown. Most people never travel around, so they don't get to see these things. Now, the benefit is, though, that we have the internet and we have these ways of seeing every country and learning about all these different things. And if you can't afford to go there at this point, maybe you can afford to see it on the internet or look around or listen. Because if you're listening to this, you're definitely listening to it on a computer, YouTube, Instagram, on a device, a phone, a laptop. And that means that you can look up these other things and you can realize how blessed you are. And I don't think we take that for granted. I think we take that for granted way too much because we don't realize what struggle really can look like and what it could really be like if you don't have food, shelter, and clothing. That's the first part, which is I want everyone to ground yourself in having a global perspective. The second thing I want to touch on is that the more reps you do, the better you get at something. So when we talk about this, I'm going to use the marathon I ran in 2019 at Lake Tahoe as an example. What ended up happening was you trained for 7 months prior. Most people will train, you could probably do it in 3 or 4 months, but I just gave myself more time because I knew it was my year goal. And the thing is that you get all the celebration, you get all the accolades, you get all the congrats when you complete it. However, the weeks of running 10 miles in the morning, 11 miles, 15 miles, 17 miles, 20 miles, you might get a wow here, a good job there, but you don't really get all the praise. And the reason for that is that you're building. That is you putting in the work, putting in a building block towards the goal that you want. And the thing is that if you try to run a marathon off the cuff, and that one was at 6,000 elevation as well. So that was another challenging component to it. And the thing is that we don't realize how much work it takes. Like we sit there a majority of the time and we see all these flash news, all these things where people are like, oh, he ran a marathon. Congratulations. That's awesome. You didn't see the 7 months of work. I recall I ran the marathon in October and in March, I was running 7-mile runs a week just to maintain, just to make sure that I didn't fall behind. Because the thing is that it's a muscle you're building on. And I want you to relate this and realize this is compatible with everything you do. So think about it. If you've ever gone skiing and you only skied for one day, how can you be good at it? Because we all sit there and we're like, oh, we're a certain age. We should be some skill level at something. Not true. If you've never skied before, then how can you expect to be good at skiing? And then you look over and there's a 4-year-old skiing down a black diamond. And that's because he's been skiing since he was 2. And he lives in the place where you're skiing. He probably lives in Utah and he skis every single day. Him and his mom go and ski every single day. It's not surprising that he's better than you. It's just part of the process. We always want, and as we get older, I feel like we don't give ourselves enough leeway to learn the process and to learn the piece. And it causes us to compare one another to each other, which is never the solution because someone's put in a lot more work than you. And that doesn't mean that you can't take that for granted. Like you can't go, oh, it must have been easy for him. You didn't see the hours and hours and tens of hours and hundreds of hours of time that I put in running before that marathon. It's not like I just showed up there without prep. And that's with everything. That is with anything you do. I'm using the sport example as an example, but it's the same as building a business, same as building your career. It's the same as making new friends. It's the same as learning an instrument. It's the same as speaking. Same for me as doing these podcasts. It's all the same. And it just takes time to get better and better at things because it's not always easy and it's not always convenient and it's can be pretty difficult actually. So running that marathon also, when you've done the work, you can sit there and when times get challenging, you know you've done it before. For example, when I was running the Lake Tahoe Marathon, I remember I think it was the first 2 miles I'm running and there is a kid there, probably 20 years old, and he goes, yeah, like you're doing really well. I'm like, thanks. And he's like, yeah, usually when you get to mile 20, that's the halfway mark. Now, if you know anything about a marathon, it's 26.2 miles. And in my head, I'm like, how is that the halfway mark? I've ran 20 miles before, never ran 26.2. So as I start edging towards this completion portion, mile 21, 22, I am struggling because this guy put in my head that I'm only halfway done. But in reality, yes, it was challenging. Yes, I was struggling. But the motto I used was, I'm actually running 100 miles today. So it was never about the completion. It was always about that I'm on the journey working towards the goal. And when we do that, we can never lose because the journey is the goal. And that's where we are going. We're just working towards something. And when we consider it a goal, it was just that it was tracked. It was just anything we measured, we can track, and you could say you've achieved a goal. And that's how there's so many of these things where it's like, I've walked 100 miles this month, or I ran 100 miles, or whatever it is, or I did 150 podcasts, anything you track becomes an accomplishment, but it's really the journey of building into it that becomes the person you want to be. And that's how you create who you really are. So the point of all this is that the more reps you do, the better you get. Meaning that if you want to get better at sales, probably take more sales calls. If you want to get better at marketing, do more marketing. If you want to get better at working out, work out more. If you want to get better at podcasts, do more podcasts. And whatever you do more of, you will improve. It won't happen incrementally. It'll happen exponentially and hockey stick. But it's important to realize this because too many people give up when it starts getting hard. And I want you to realize that you shouldn't give up. You shouldn't at all because you're that much closer. You're almost there. And how good is it going to feel once you accomplish that? So don't say I'm only going to do this if I can't achieve this. Just go after it and do it. Go, be great. make the difference, improve your life, change the people, change the story, be the one to make the change because it's up to you. No one's going to help you and you have to go do it. And the last idea that changes perspective was for me was whose story are you buying? When I say that, I mean the normal story in America is grow up, go to college, get a job, buy a house, have a family. And that's great. But maybe that's not your story. And maybe that's not the way you want to live it. Because the way they say that does not allow for the parameters of existence to occur. They don't realize that they're trying to box everything in when in reality, life's all about unknowns. Like you have no idea. And that's why with me, I started Edwards Consulting because I felt like that parameter of quote unquote success of buying the big house, buying the new car, getting the thing, getting the girl, like it was just an accumulation. And in reality, what if I just flipped it on its side and now my parameters of success are now instead of chasing something, it's working on yourself. And it's for me, I have 5 pillars. And this changed everything for me. And the 5 pillars are mental health, physical health, community service philanthropy, spirituality, and relationships. And if I'm able to sit there and focus on these 5 pillars, then I can work on them and I can improve them instead of success to me is getting a promotion. See how that's very one sided and that's only one thing that you can work on and it might happen once a year. If that's your only parameter, then it's very difficult for you to continue on and grow. So if you have different areas of your life that you want to excel, and the way I do this is I sit there and if I have a client, I'll just go, what's your mental health at on a 1 to 10? And then you give me a score. And then what might a 10 look like? And you can do this exercise with yourself and it will change the way you think about things because you'll see where you're at and where you want to be. And once you do that, it'll change you. It'll change you because now you know what you actually want. The problem is that many of us are sitting there and we have these perspectives of, I want the job, I want to get a promotion, I want to buy the house, I want the family. Great. But what if that doesn't happen? Or what if it does happen and you don't enjoy it? You need to figure out what's good for you and figure out who you are. So the reason I say all this and the reason I'm coming out with this is because I'm realizing that a lot of people are in great situations. A lot of people are doing very well. They have food, shelter, clothing, and they just take it for granted because it's what they're used to. And they don't have the proper perspective, which is, as we discussed today, the global perspective, which is, I told you about the story of Peru. I told you about how the people in Ecuador were struggling. I told you about the porters when we hiked the Inca Trail. Or it's that we are in control and we can get better with every single rep we do. And it's not 1 + 1 = 2, but instead it might be 1 + 1 = 1,000 because you might be one person away from changing your entire life. You might be one activity away from changing your entire life. You might be one thing away to change everything. And the last part is that what is success to you? What is winning to you? Most people I ask what they want in 5 years, they're like, oh, I want to be higher up in the company. Why? So I can make more money, so I can get a bigger house, so I can have a family. It's all the same. So why don't you figure out for yourself what it is you want out of life? What is this experience that you're looking for? Because there's so many of us that are we're just doing what we're told. And I think it's super important to get really detailed and really figure out what you want in life and what is good for you. And if you need help with that, reach out. I'm more than happy to help. You can email me at jordan@edwards.consulting. There's no .com. There's no nothing. It's jordan@edwards.consulting. And I'd love to help you. We could schedule a call and we could talk about it and we can see what works for you. Because the thing is here, you're not in a bad place. You're not struggling. You're not doing poorly. You just don't have the mindset set up correctly. You're just not on the proper framework and you don't have the proper perspective. So if you're worried about any of this, and the reason I said these three is because they're all in your control and they're all absolutely free. So it's just you sitting there with yourself, figuring out what it is. And like I said, if you need help, reach out. I'm here to help. I'd love to talk to you about this stuff. This is what I like to do. I like changing people's perspective so it frees up their mind so they're not so overwhelmed with what's going on because we only have such few time alive. We only have such few time with ourselves. And it's like, why don't we make the most of it? Why don't we be happy? And you might ask, Jordan, why are you doing this podcast? Because it makes me happy. It's something I enjoy. It's something I get a lot of joy out of. And that is only because I learned about myself. So do the work, learn about yourself, see what you can do. And if you ever get worried and don't think you're in a good place or you're living at home or you're struggling or any of that, remember this, have a global perspective. Everything that you do more reps of, you will improve on. And you get to determine what success is for you. There's no one else who's going to tell you what it is. You decide for yourself because you are powerful and you can do this. So go out there, go get it, stay clocked in. And I can't wait to hear about this from you guys and hear about what's going on in your lives. So I hope you all have an amazing day and just keep clocking in. Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.